There's no such thing as sight reading. And kids have the ability to understand time signatures and note values and how notes get their name from a very young age. Here in Texas, the public schools are teaching fractions by the 3rd grade. So, if you have a 8-year-old beginner music student, they're probably already working on fractions in their math class. Beginner band doesn't even start till the kids are 11 or 12. So a typical beginner student can understand how note names work, how note values work, and how time signatures work if you explain it to them using terms that they understand. Now, if you tell the kid that time signatures and note values is a complex set of variables on a relativistic sliding scale of subdivisions of the metronomic pulse in both common and compound meters. Well, yeah, they're not going to understand that. I don't even know what most of that stuff means. But you can draw a circle on a piece of paper and tell them this is a pizza, this is a whole pizza. And then draw a line through the middle and say, how many halves of a pizza are in a whole pizza? And now they understand why 2 halves make 1 whole, 2 half notes make 1 whole note. You can do that, and they'll get it. Also, because they're already working on similar skills in their academic classes, this will put you, as the music teacher, in teamwork with the academic teacher. So you're giving the kid a real-life application for what they're learning in their math class. So the math teacher's reinforcing what you're teaching, you're reinforcing what the math teacher's teaching, and the kid benefits. And so kids have the ability to understand from a very young age that a half note's called a half note because it's half of a whole note, and a quarter's called a quarter because it's a quarter of a whole note. They know that 4 quarters are in a whole dollar, so it's not too hard to understand that there's 4 quarters in a whole note. They can understand that an eighth means an eighth of a whole note, right? Takes 8 of them to make a whole note. They can do that. So we don't need to make this blanket statement from the beginning as if the kids are dumb that quarter note means 1 beat, and then have to come back and correct that and contradict ourselves later. Instead, we can explain to them conceptually how the time signature works. What does the top number do? What does the bottom number do? How do the note values relate to the note name? And then apply that information to the first and most common and most relevant time signature, common time, 4/4 time. And then as we encounter new time signatures in the future, that's an opportunity to go back and revisit and reteach the original concept using the new variable. Okay, we're in 2/4 time now. Remember what the top number means. Remember what the bottom number means. Remember how notes get their names and how note values work. How does that apply here? 3/4 time, how does that apply here? You get to teach it again. You get to go back and revisit, and you're never contradicting yourself. And every time you find a new time signature, now we're in cut time. 2 on top, 2 on bottom. What do those numbers mean? Now we're in 6/8 time. You're reinforcing the same information with all these new variables, drilling in the information. The kids can absolutely understand it. You never have to contradict yourself. Most of my students cover all those time signatures by the end of the first year. And kids are smart. They can do this. But if we start off at the beginning and just make a blanket statement that quarter note means 1 beat, and just believe it's true because I tell you it is, with the intent of coming back and contradicting ourselves and correcting that information later, well, we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. We're trading a small little problem from at the beginning for a much larger problem later, because if we let the kid think on every piece of music they play for the first 3 months or 6 months or a year that quarter note means 1 beat, they're drilling that information in, creating that habit, and it takes longer to unlearn a habit than it does to learn one. And so it's going to be harder to go back and fix it than it would be just do it right the first time. Also, if you tell the kids there's something that's untrue from the start, and then you come back later and contradict yourself, well, they remember that. They're smart. And they're not going to believe anything you say after that. Well, the last thing you told me, I worked on for a year and came back later and told me it's not true. Why would I believe what you're saying now? I saw a master class a while back with a guy that's popular down here in Texas. And he said that he tells the kids that quarter note means one beat. And if they ask why, he tells them, you don't need to know why. You just believe it's true because I say it is. Well, if somebody tells you to believe it's true just because they say it is with no explanation, that's not education. That's indoctrination. My name's Mark Dooley. I've been a private music teacher for 36 years, focused on practical theory and music literacy. If you'd like to hear more, follow me. If you like lessons, contact me. If you can learn how to read words, you can learn how to read music.